Hi, I'm Simon Mannering. I'm here at South by Southwest, and I've got the great opportunity to speak to Jason Falls, who's someone I follow all the time on Twitter, who constantly puts out great material. And I thought I'd get a chance to ask him a few of the questions that really sort of plague me on a daily basis, doing what I do, dealing with brands. So, Jason, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great.
Well, the first thing I wanted to say was, so many brands, even though they want to engage with social media, they still look at it through the lens of themselves. Mm-hmm. They still listen with their own brands in mind. They're not actually listening to what people are telling them. Is there anything you'd say to that?
Yeah, I think what I try to tell brand managers, marketing managers, even CEOs when I talk to them is that social media marketing spins traditional marketing around a little bit and makes it consumer-centric, not product-centric,
right,
and not company-centric. And so if you go to the table with the mindset that I want to find a need that my consumer has, mm-hmm, and deliver on that need so they no longer have that need or that need is fulfilled,
right,
then you're providing something of value to them. And sometimes that consumer need is not about your product or service.
Right.
Sometimes it's actually just fulfilling a need. Probably a really good example, I did I pitched an idea out there for a spirits brand not too long ago.
Right.
And what we found through the research, and they're really good about looking at consumer research and trying to find consumer insights, but they're not looking for social insights.
Right.
And so the social insight that I was able to pull out of the research that they gave me was, they have a target audience that is electronically disconnected. They're constantly trying to keep in touch with their friends and their family, but more importantly for the 25-year-old male who's their particular target audience, they're trying to keep up with where their friends are going to bars on the weekends, mm-hmm, but then they're also trying to keep up with where the women are going on the weekends, okay?
Can't imagine why, but I think I understand.
Exactly, and so basically the concept that I drew out of that was, let's create an application, mm-hmm, that ties in some Facebook and some Twitter and some Foursquare, some geo-targeting, that aggregates those friend list information together in a sort of bar hopping scenario, and says, okay, they can look at one panel on one screen on their smartphone and know, okay, these 3 women are over at this bar, my 3 buddies are over at that bar, and another set of friends is here, so they know where to go and they can connect with each other a little bit easier.
And that's such a great example of when you're actually listening to the need. You don't know what you're going to do as a brand until you're told what they need, as opposed to saying, well, I've listened and I'm going to tell you what you need.
Absolutely.
Which is such a shift in emphasis. So many brands are also, a lot of them accepting this in principle and so on, but still they can't make the institutional, the infrastructure changes because they still have top-down hierarchies in place and there's these free-flowing conversations out there. If they are serious about engaging, if they are serious about listening, where do they begin? I mean, a brand says, right, I want to engage with social media, right, I want to listen. How do they start? Because listening sounds quite passive to them. It doesn't feel like something active.
Right.
So what would you say?
I think there's 2 things that I would do. First of all, you have, if you're an established brand and you're not brand new, you probably have a quote-unquote community of people who are either on an email marketing list or people who have purchased your product before. You have a database of consumers.
Right.
Ask them. Those are the people that buy your product. Those are the people that love you, that want to buy your product. You want more people like them, so ask them what they need. I think a lot of marketers out there assume that, okay, the public is not intelligent enough to tell us what we need to know. We have to assume what they need and what they need to know. If you turn around and ask your consumers what it is they're looking for, they're smart enough to tell you.
And do you think brands should be intimidated or frightened by sharing power or control or responsibility for the brand with consumers because they've held it all so tightly before?
Right.
I mean, what do you say to brands when they're like, you know what, I'm sorry, but we're so invested in this mindset, we're not going to kind of distribute it out there, we're not going to democratize stewardship of the brand.
Right. I'd say that the ones that are going to maintain that intimidation and fear of sharing control are the ones that are going to slowly die away.
Right.
Because what you're doing is you're saying my needs as the company, as the brand, are more important than your needs as the consumer, and we're just going to dictate to you what this brand is all about. The brand isn't yours. It was never yours to begin with. The perceptions that people take away from you, the concept of the brand that they have in their mind is what your brand is. It's nothing about what you're saying to them. It's about what they're saying to you, and you need to start paying attention to that.
Right, and so it's almost like a constant feedback loop between the brand, its organization, and consumers, and that's very hard to institutionalize and formalize when you've got all these job descriptions and sort of the infrastructure from the past. So, okay, a brand says, right, we're going to listen for a while. should they jump into social media outright at the base level with Twitter and Facebook and so on, or should they kind of do that generation leap and think, oh great, everything's shifting towards community and location-based applications? Like, where should they begin?
Well, I think you have to do a little bit of soul searching and a little bit of researching and find out where your target audience plays, what they use the web for, what social tools they use, and where you can most easily provide those value gaps that they're missing, those social needs.
Right.
And so if you have an audience of 55 and older women, statistics tell us that they're growing on Facebook, not necessarily a high concentration of those on Twitter necessarily.
Right.
So maybe you need to shift your focus to Facebook, or maybe you even need to target a little bit and say, well, we want to go to social networks like VibrantNation.com, which is all about boomer women,
right,
and really talk about a hyper-concentrated, almost hyper-local, but really more hyper-topical group of social network communities that serve your purpose and are the target consumers that can give you better intelligence on that target so that you can do more for the Facebooks and things like that.
I mean, it's fantastic. There's so many research tools out there, and every day millions of people are volunteering the data that informs that research. I mean, this is the world's greatest focus group. One of the sort of logic gaps that I always come up against is brands understand a strategy from a creative point of view for traditional media. But when it comes to social media, they don't understand what the hell a social media strategy is. Can you explain? What is a social media strategy?
A social media strategy is very simply identifying the goals, the business objectives that you want to accomplish using social media. So before you get to that point, you have to know what social media can do. It can drive sales if you want it to. It can increase your brand awareness and your market share or share of voice if you want it to. But you have to prescribe what you want it to do.
Right.
And once you have that goal in mind, you can develop objectives that are measurable, that have a deadline, that have a target goal, things of that nature, that you can measure against and measure your success later to know that you've made progress or you haven't, or how much progress you've made along that line. And from those measurable objectives, then you start enumerating strategies. Maybe it's on Twitter, maybe it's on Facebook, maybe it's on something else.
I mean,
that you can ultimately accomplish those goals.
It's just interesting because everyone thinks they're in a real-time context, so they need results now.
Right.
But they still need a strategy which has a time frame that informs it. And last question, there's a few things that are exciting people right now. We've heard a lot of noise about augmented reality and layer and so on, location-based stuff. Now there is voice-activated stuff like Bubbly. I mean, personally, with all the stuff that you're scanning and on top of every day, what are you sort of excited about for 2010, 2011?
Right. There's a couple of things that really excite me. One right now is social CRM, social customer relationship management, especially in the PR world.
Right.
I think public relations professionals are getting better and better at understanding social media and how to use it. And now that you have the ability to go out there and say, okay, here are target media members in our group, and target influencers or bloggers or whatnot. Well, now it's not just we have their email address, it's we know them on Twitter, we know them on Facebook, we read their blog, and we can now, using technology, aggregate all of that information together into a very useful database that allows a PR person to look at a screenshot and say, okay, I know everything I need to know about this particular contact. They can then deliver better value to that contact and serve the brand better. And so I think the biggest leap in the next few years is PR getting better at this.
And I mean, the net takeaway on from that point, and everything I'm hearing here at South by Southwest, is that as advertising partners, we can even be better stewards for the brands. The data's out there, the tools out there. We just got to get our heads around the skill sets required to do that. And that means that we're going to have to let go of some of the sort of systems that are in place before and embrace the changes that social media is bringing about. But if we do that, we can be repurposed and more meaningful and more relevant to our clients than ever. And we're so lucky to have people like Jason here, not just because he's super smart, but also because he makes it fun. So thank you for your time,
well,
Jason.
Thank you very much, and
Really
keep in mind that this was produced by Dave Fleet.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome, guys.